You're listening to The Skateboarding Show.
May you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Ali Menzies. I'm the chairman of Skateboard Scotland, and I've been in that role for quite a number of years now. Over 15, I think, if I calculate correctly. And I guess that's it.
15 years?
Yeah, it might be longer than that. Certainly, I was involved from the very start when we first created the organisation to try and bring some sort of organisation to Scottish skateboarding. So I was part of the first board, but I wasn't actually the chairman at that point. And then the year after, the chairman left, and I kind of decided that it was worthy to pursue and keep alive. So I did that and volunteered to be the chairman, and I've been the chairman ever since. Every year they seem to keep voting me back on, so we are where we are. So I might have to start, as we become more governance compliant, there might be a requirement for me to sort of move into other roles and not be always the head, but I don't want to end up in a sort of Sepp Blatter type scenario, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So can I give some context at how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, ancient. 46 last week. That's how old I am.
Well, happy birthday for then.
Yeah, thanks.
So you were like 31 when you started?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, I've been skateboarding since I was like a kid, obviously, like in the 1988 or something I started skateboarding, so I've always been in and around skateboarding, and I guess what drove us to go, it kind of randomly just, you know, as time has gone on, there's always been more and more sort of requirements from, like, you know, once councils started building more skate parks and stuff like that, and we saw, like, you know, bad products that were getting sold by, like, playground companies and stuff. That was, you know, one of the key reasons for me getting involved at the start, was to make sure that money that was getting spent by government bodies on skate facilities wasn't just getting wasted, which you saw a lot of in the sort of early 90s, so or the 90s in general. So, you know, that was one of our key things, to make sure that didn't happen anymore. So we wanted to create a body that could be eventually recognised by Skateboard Scotland, and is now, and, you know, so that if there's any sort of money getting spent like that, then a skater gets to look at it first before it gets wasted, which is why we're here.
A lot of well-meaning councils who are not very well informed. Yeah,
I mean, we still see it nowadays, now and again, where a council's got some money to spend and they just, you know, contracts go in and do something, but it's not as nearly as prevalent as it used to be, thankfully, because if they're going to Sport Scotland for any funding at all, we get questioned on it, and we get consulted on the design and stuff, so that means we've kind of got that kind of stopgap to make sure that the design's going to be good for skaters in Scotland, and there isn't, you know, money getting wasted.
Nice. So let's go straight into with a little bit of context. So if you've got a vested interest in skate parks, then so let's go straight into the controversial question of, should somebody polish and seal a concrete skate park?
You do like controversial questions, don't you? Well, that is... so there's been a few attempts at that sort of stuff. I would say that if you can do it and do it right, then yes. But, like, there's not a massive evidence or, like, you know, portfolio of these that have been done successfully. There's been ones that have been, like, resurfaced properly, like in London. I think there's been a few down there that have been, like, proper done, which look pretty decent. The most recent, what was it? Is it Brixton, is it? Is that the one that's got
the sort of red
one?
Yeah,
that one. What's it called?
Yeah.
The bumps or something. Again, that looks pretty amazing. So that looks like it's been done well. So I think if it's done properly, then yes. But the problem you've got is when you start messing around with old concrete and trying to rejuvenate it, it can go one or two ways. If you've got an expert who knows what they're doing, dealing with it, it probably could be quite good. But if it's done wrong and it ends up, you know, ruining what was there, then it's a bit of a concern. I guess Libby is a controversial topic here, and so there's various opinions on that, I would say.
It is controversial, and without wanting to fulfill too many cliches about, like, or make it appear that I'm fulfilling cliches, just because you're Scottish, so you must obviously know everything about Livy Skate Park. That's no spring chicken, that skate park, is it? What sort of?
No, it's one of the oldest going. 1980, when was it? Christ, I can never remember. '81 or something, or '82. I think it got built.
Wow.
Like
Okay.
just at the basically start of skateboarding dying. I think in that era, in terms of like dropping off the face of the earth, and street skateboarding kicking in. It was kind of that sort of part of the world time. So yeah, it's been around for a long time, and there's talk of trying to get it registered as a national monument or something. I think that might have been applied for. I'm not sure whether it's been achieved or not, but certainly it's obviously it's still got rad shapes and stuff to it. It's just a bit rough around the edges. There's obviously that new bit they've added on, which is some of the sort of wee street sections seems to be liked by the kids and stuff, but the bowl bit was a bit controversial at the time as well, because it didn't quite turn out the way everyone hoped it would. It wasn't quite pipeline like it was meant to be, But,
right. Yeah, because it's got that really cool sort of like half pipe that gets bigger as it goes down, and then they could have really done with bowling out the end of that a little bit more. It's more sort of a flat bank, curvy flat bank, isn't it?
I mean, that's the original. That was the first. That's the original design. That reservoir, that big sort of slalom run to the bottom, and that was always there. That's always been there. And then there's the bowl, and the sort of the main sort of half pipe as well. That was the main original section. There was an extension in the '90s, which is the sort of bit to the cock and balls to the right or left, even if you're standing at the top, which is still quite a funny extension with a couple of half pipes and a sort of. Was meant to be a fun box, but turned into a sort of funny thing. But it's still skatable and fun. And then there's obviously the newer extension, which is the controversialist one, I would say.
Right. So did you, again, just to give some history and some context to you, did you ever work in the skateboard industry?
No, that's one thing I haven't done. I've always just, don't know. I went where the money was when I was leaving university. And I had a business degree, so I went into the biggest sector in Edinburgh, which is sort of financial services. So I've been working in there, and I still do work in that sector for my day job. I do all this other stuff from my sort of free time. So yeah, I've never had the desire to, mainly because I know there's not that much money in skateboarding. It's quite hard to make a good living in skateboarding. People can do it. If you're Tony Hawk, you're living the dream. But if you're not, then it's quite hard to make it in skateboarding unless you find your niche and do well.
I was going to say, you obviously quite enjoy being able to do things like pay a mortgage and drive a car and stay in a hotel and things like that when you go away. Yeah,
exactly. Well, I don't want to stay in hotels when I go away, but yeah.
Very sensible, really, because I think that's something that kind of needs to be addressed in some ways, and I wonder about the governing bodies. Sort of.
I think we're getting closer to that, right? I think there are now jobs in skateboarding that could pay you a decent enough wage in terms of obviously the organisational side of things. Like from a Scottish perspective, we've just sort of applied for funding for the first time as the governing body to get a job for someone in skateboarding in Scotland. But even that, it's only going to be a part-time job, and this is our first sort of foray into this kind of stuff. So it's not. It's not assured either, right? We're just asked for funding, but might not get it. Obviously, if you're down, the Skateboard GB side of things is a much bigger piece of work, and obviously it involves a lot more organisation because we're dealing with Olympic committees and all that good stuff, and sort of what's the word, performance side of the sport, right? So they're dealing with all that, which is involves funding, gets money, and there is now people getting paid a wage to deal with skateboarding, which is great because. Someone needs to do it, and we want to make sure that people that were doing it were the right people and not a roller skating federation, like
what really happened. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes and no. I think we're in a better state than we could have been, right? Because we did have the BRSF sort of scouting around trying to. If we hadn't created Skateboard England and Skateboard GB when we did, we would have had to deal with the British Roller Skate Federation. Which thankfully we didn't, because they decided to, the powers higher up globally created their own new brand, World Skate. So, while I think, I don't know, we had the other guys with the World Skateboard Federation who were trying to do something similar, but I had a few dealings with them before the World Skate took over. But, I think it's all much of a muchness at the top, I think, in terms of who runs these things. It's more about ticking boxes and, I guess.
I was also getting at the idea of the reality of the situation. Like, I wonder at what point some of the governing bodies in the nicest possible sense, have a sort of responsibility to say, do you know what, working in skateboarding, it may or may not be possible, and actually, you know, like maybe we're doing more of a service to some of you youngsters to tell you, you know what, it just may not happen. It just may not happen. You might just have to think about what you could do as a normal job, and
Yes,
to
I think
fund
anyone
your
that's
lifestyle.
sensible who's going into professional skateboarding has got a backup plan. Like, because, like, you know, as I said, unless you, I mean, you don't have to become Tony Hawk. I guess there's guys a lot like who are earning a decent enough wage, but you've got to be top
Top
500 in the
tier,
world to be
yeah.
making a living off skateboarding, right? So that's a very small number of people, the number of people that actually start skateboarding. So I think you should just skateboard for fun. That's why it's there. And, you know, if you want to compete, fine, crack on, enjoy yourself. That's fun too. But, like, you know, don't pin your hopes on making it a job unless you're very, very lucky, or, like, you know, if that's really what you want. People can do it, right? If you persevere and you get good enough, then, you know, there's loads of stories of people making it from, you know, right down from nothing in Scotland, and, you know, you get your John Rattray, I guess, if you're looking from a Scottish side of things, or, you know, Colin Kennedy. There's a few people that have made it out of Scottish skateboarding, but, like, and UK skateboarding too, but it's not a massive, well-paid future, I guess.
I think we have a responsibility in a way to be honest, and I think that's one of the things that skateboarding is so wonderful about, that it's entirely honest. You know, you can't be that kid down the, well, you could be, but it'll soon become obvious if you're that youngster down the skate park going, oh, I can do this trick, I can do that trick. It doesn't take much for somebody to go, well, go on then, show us then.
Yeah, exactly. In the days when people used to put, like, grind marks on their trucks and stuff like that. Whatever.
Yeah.
You're right.
There's a real honesty to skateboarding, which I think puts some people off, because we live in this really fake world of just utter fakeness, utter, like, perfect Instagram accounts and perfect images and all this sort of fakeness. And there's something that happens when you get involved in skateboarding where you realise, oh, god damn, I'm either going to have to put some hard work in to make this happen, or I'm going to have to move on to the next easy thing to do.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've ever thought about that that much in depth, but yeah, I guess skateboarding is not easy, right? It's sure as Bob Sanderson, to quote a man who used to MC quite a lot back in the day, you know, skateboarding the hardest job in the world. Like, you know, it's certainly not, you're not going to get what you put in it back in any way, monetarily, unless you luck out really, really well and find yourself. A lot about being in the right place as well as having the ability.
But that doesn't mean, I mean, and this all sounds like a bit of a downer, but I'm with you that it doesn't mean that you can't go and have a whole shed load of fun. You know, it doesn't mean that you can't go to an event, or go and enter a competition, or go to a jam, or go to a board launch, or a signing, or a demo, and go and have, like, the absolute time of your life.
Yeah, exactly. It's there to be enjoyed, isn't it? Skateboarding. I find myself driving around the country, doing all sorts of things, and getting involved, running events and stuff, and, you know, it's great fun, all that, you know, side of things. But you can take it or leave it. You can still just skate a curb down your street if that's what you want to do, or you know, it's entirely up to you. That's the great thing about skateboarding.
I think that is a great thing, and I think that's something that, and it sounds like you guys have got a lot more experience of this, because we all know that Skateboard GP, you know, what are they, like, into their maybe 7th year if we're lucky, and so it sounds like you guys with 15, 16 years behind you, are you conscious of that sort of balance that you have to strike between, yes, we're a sort of governing body, and yes, we want to get involved in some of the quote unquote official sides of skateboarding, but we're also representing this very, like you say, this very raw activity, which, if you really want to, you don't have to know anyone's name, you don't have to know about any pros or any competitions or any events, or even the fact that Skateboard Scotland exists. You can just be out on a board, on a curb, mucking about, having a good time.
Yeah, that's one of the best things about it. I think when we first started Skateboard Scotland, we did get a lot of jibes about, you know, what the hell are you doing? Who are you to this, you know, all this sort of shit, which is, you know, fair enough. You kind of take those sort of things when you've not got any sort of history behind your evidence to back up what you're doing. And at the time, probably, you know, there probably wasn't a need to have a governing body at that point, because nothing really was getting done. But I think as we've gone on, and the skateboarding's grown during that time pretty exponentially as well. So we've been building up sort of grassroots events throughout that time, and there's always been, you know, the grassroots events like Livy Skate Jam and, you know, other things like that, Perth and Dundee and a few of these other parks that have, like, as long as they've been in existence, have always done some kind of annual jam, right? So there's always that sort of grassroots skateboarding, and we always kind of supported that. And, you know, we've gone our way to attend those events, bring prizes, and, you know, make sure that those events are great, as well as running our own events. Like when we first went to the War of the Roses events in England back in the day when they were running, I can't remember the exact dates, 2000s or something like that, maybe.
I remember some of those, yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of encouraged us to create our own, you know, War of the Thistles event, and we've been running that ever since, every year, apart from COVID when we got, and some sort of, I think we got maybe bummed out 2 years, but certainly it's been ongoing ever since it started. So these are the sort of events that, you know, people, like a fun event where, you know, people can win some money, have a good time, see some rad skateboarding, and that's kind of the events that we like. But we also run a bit more official ones where we do, you know, like the Scottish Champs, where we have like the, you know, the top guys that win in the street comp and win in the park. I'll try and drive them down to the UK events so that we can have a Scottish representative in the UK events as well, and that's been quite successful in the last couple of years as well. So
yeah, I think that's...
So a bit of both, not just grassroots, but like performance stuff too, right? But yeah, but still keeping it fun.
I think that's, again, we're sort of hitting that key word of balance, aren't we? Where like you could turn up to a jam and get amongst it, or you could be like really trying to make sure, I want to win the national championships, and I want to go and skate in the UK championships and be a representative and let people know, I'm here. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm getting involved in.
Yeah, totally. It's pretty. I mean, it's good that there's opportunities there for people now, because I guess a few years ago you'd be hard pressed to, unless you picked up a good sponsor that was going to pay your way to get to bigger events. There'd be very few and far between people that were making it across to European events or, you know, global events or whatever. But I think while maybe our GB representatives aren't from this country or weren't last time around, you know, we should see that gradually get to a point where we have got some UK contenders in the Olympics. So it's obviously quite a small number of competitors last time. Hopefully it'll be a bit more next time and allow a few more entries to get there.
Yeah, it's a funny one because, of course, I mean, you understand this, and I'm not trying to patronise you or teach Granny to sack eggs in any particular way, but you know as well as I do that we've got to qualify through. Like we can have a massive pool of skateboarders all we like, but if nobody qualifies through the events like in Rio de Janeiro and so on and so forth that are happening, then very unfortunately we just won't get a representative team out there, because and even then isn't it like a maximum of 3 per? Is it 3 per country?
It's continental, isn't it? So you'd be more likely to get in it if you're from the African continent, for instance, if the competition is not as good as it is in Europe. So Europe's quite a tough nut, I would say. And America's obviously, they always get the full contingent out of there, and there's, you know, that's pretty tough competition for those positions too. I guess that's why some of the American athletes who have other allegiances historically, or, you know, maybe their mum and dad are British or whatever, or mum and dad are from wherever else, they maybe decide to compete for the other country on the basis on their going back to the roots, and because they're more likely to be able to compete as well if they're not under the American banner, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. So with things like those grassroots events that you're getting involved in, you're saying have you got a nice full calendar of things going on up and down Scotland?
Yeah, I mean the usual like sort of skate park events sort of happen themselves. Like we don't really have to organise them anymore. They just always have happened, and probably some of them we've never really got involved with at all. Like we don't really get involved with Libby, that just does itself, and along with the other ones, and it's more about a turn up and jam. And I think some of these events, you know, they're not as big as they used to be because of like sort of bureaucracy, councils and stuff. You can't just in theory rock up and do an event like a skateboard event at a skate park without doing it officially through the council. So we don't really run any outdoor events like that anymore because we can't, unless a council asks us to come along and do it, or we have to go through some sort of rigorous process where we borrow the skate park off the council for a while and pay some insurance and all this sort of stuff, and then it'll rain So it's one of them ones where we just don't really bother doing those events unless. So we leave that sort of stuff up to the grassroots communities. If they do it themselves and have a good time and, chuck a PA up and have a good day, then, like Dundee, Perth, all these sort of things, I don't think they ever. No one can tax the council and organises any of this stuff. It just happens, right? So they can't. No one can stop people just turning up at a skate park and having a good time. Like that's what they're there for. So I don't think that councils have really got a leg to stand on in terms of someone doing something like that, unless it's causing noise or problems or whatever. So it's just the problem is insurance. If someone hurts themselves and decides to claim against you, then you're in a bad place. So we don't really run any of those events anymore due to our position.
Right. But are you working with some of the indoor skate parks, or are you?
Yeah, so we do a lot. That's generally where we run events now, right? Because they've already got first aid, insurance. Everything's there. You don't need to go off, and you can just turn up and away you go, plug in and play. Right, you're good to go in these places, which is great. And we work closely with Loading Bay. We've done quite a few events there in Glasgow because it's a very, very good people that work there, and they're quite helpful at organising event. They work with us as well. It's not just all down to us. So, but we do obviously War of Thistles. We do usually do it over 2 locations and over the 2 days, and that's happening again in May this year. So, if you're down in England, you want to come up and try and win some money. That's where you want to be in May time. First weekend, bank holiday weekend. Get yourselves up. There'll be some cash to everyone.
Nice. And you were talking about, and we've both talked about this balance between the sort of grassroots and the performance side of it.
Yeah.
And are you getting into the sort of performance athlete side of it at all?
Well, yes, because we feed into GB, right? So we've got one of our representatives, Hamish from Knight, he's actually the coach of the the GB snowboard team. So He's pretty in it in terms of he's actually been through this whole process of taking a sport to the Olympics, right? He's been there from the very start of coaching UK athletes to perform at the Olympics, right? So he knows all about it. So he's been a skateboarder. I've been skateboarding with him since we were kids at Bristo Square back in the day. So he knows the stuff skateboarding wise, and he's obviously a great resource in terms of Olympic knowledge. So that's why he's part of our board, and that's why he's the guy that's on the GB board helping us to get our views heard. And so any decisions that are happening on the GB board, we have a Scottish representative on there assisting. So he's our performance guy. I think we do feed into all the sort of like pathway stuff as well. So like I've done the teaching kids to skate course that's been set up by Skateboard GB ruling something. What's it called? I can't remember what it's called. But I've got the qualifications. So we've also paid for a couple of people to do the sort of coaching course as well in Scotland, so that we can have coaches coaching other coaches, and to increase the number of coaches in skateboarding. While not everyone wants a coach, I certainly believe that you're better like learning off your mates and pushing yourself forward that way. But I think there is a demand for coaches, and we can always get kids, mums and dads asking, can we get a coach? So I think demand's there, and someone needs to sort of supply it. So we've been sort of pushing to make sure that people have that training to be able to do it properly and make sure it's done right. So, while not everyone wants to be coached as a skateboarder, I think you'll all be in a position where you've wanted to learn a trick and someone helps you beside you who knows how to do it. That's exactly the same thing, right? But you're just paying someone who knows what they're talking about to. And some people are better than others. Like some people know, how to tweak something to make it work, and whereas others won't have a clue. They'll just know they can do the trick. So it does take a bit of like a certain ability to be a coach. So it's not as simple as just being able to skate.
No, it's really not. No, it's really not.
Totally.
It's I spent enough years coaching, and it's very rarely. It's not always to do with the technique. It's to do with how you actually do the coaching. It's to do with understanding the learner, and understanding what you can do to help them, as well as technique. Technique's got a small part in it, but it's a lot more to do with understanding yourself, understanding the learner, understanding how they can understand something, and then helping them understand it and helping them grow and develop, and helping them grow in such a way that they can continue teaching themselves, so they're not dependent on you. But
Yeah, exactly.
We'll get into that another time.
You're listening to The Skateboarding Show.
Yeah, I'm also thinking like so that's great that you do that. I mean, do you have people in mind at the moment where you're thinking, my gosh, if this young person keeps going the way they're going, then I think we could be looking at some serious Scottish representation.
I think the female side is definitely looking pretty decent in terms of like we've got a few younger girls that are like coming up through the ranks, and obviously that's where there's a bit more opportunity globally to do well right now.
Yeah.
Purely because there's not as many girls skating as there is guys, right? So, and the history isn't there as much as not. I'm going to say this is not. There always has been women skateboarders. Let me correct myself there. But you know, in terms of the sort of quantity of people skateboarding now, the women population's gone through the roof, which is glad to see. So, and I think that's the area where, you know, obviously we saw success in Team GP in the Olympics because we've, you know, there's not as many women competitors, so there's a bit more opportunity to try, and the levels are kind of a bit more similar globally as well in terms of standards. Obviously, are, you know, it's maybe not strictly true, but there's still, like, in terms of like when you look at like the Japanese, Americans, the Brazilians, you know, there's obviously a crazy level of skateboarding, and then there's, you know, the rest of the world sort of thing. So
yeah.
I think it's a bit more level playing field in the female side of things, which makes it a bit easier for people to come up. We've certainly seen a few Scottish girls that have been going to the UK champs and making it across to the champs in Rome and stuff. So it's been good to see that sort of success on the female side of things.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear that you, and you know those girls, and are you working with them, or are you just aware of them? Or
I mean, they're pretty much pushing themselves, right? They're all working towards, and they're working with Skateboard GB as well, I guess, because they got them out to the events and stuff like that. So I took down Marianne down to the UK champs. I think the other girls were taken down by their folks and stuff, but certainly, like, you know, we'll help where we can. But generally, they're quite sort of pushing themselves forward now, right?
Nice. And how's the industry side of things up there at the moment? In terms of like, how are you finding things like shops? How are they? Are you aware of the sort of industry side of it? Do you guys keep an awareness of that?
Well, we do chat to. We know a few skateboard shop owners and stuff, so and we obviously chat with them when we're like tapping up for sponsorship and whatever else. And some of them are sort of closer friends than others, and some of them are Jamie players on our board, for instance. So we catch up with them too. I mean, obviously the business has gone up. I think lockdown brought a few people back to skateboarding, and the rise of the female skateboarder has also brought that up as well. I would say that the other problems are now like sort of like Brexit and stuff costing a bloody fortune. So I think that some of the, you know, I think while there's a much bigger increased skateboard population, I guess is how much money they got to spend on skate stuff, and can they afford all the expensive stuff that's had to be imported and dealt with all the extra hassle in getting it across here. So I don't know exactly how well it's doing. I think it's better than it was a few years ago, but it's probably, you know, not amazing still. But could be worse, I guess.
And in terms of like brands, what brands do you have up there at the moment, and how are they doing?
Well, there isn't a massive like skate brands. I would say there's a couple of guys that, like, you know, get boards printed and do a few things like that. But you know, it's not. I wouldn't say it's like massive. Not like what a Third Foot was down there producing boards and all that sort of stuff. There isn't really an industry like that. I mean, I'm sure there probably is some guys doing stuff, people making stuff out of like old boards and stuff like that. A bit of an industry on that side of things seems to be doing quite well. But yeah, I mean, there's a few little companies that I can think of that are doing their own thing, but they're not like massive companies or anything. It's quite very small, the industry in Scotland in that respect.
Right. Okay. And again, that's a reflection of that sort of DIY general skate ethos, whether it be San Diego, Scotland, or wherever it may be. Like people just getting on with doing stuff themselves because they just feel like doing
because they want to, right?
Yeah.
There's like little brands out there, but they're not like selling boards to England as far as I know. If they are, it's pretty small quantities.
Nice. Well, it's nice to know that people are still doing stuff because, like we say, it's important. It's important to to remember that skateboarding doesn't just exist out of a few companies in California. You know, skateboarding does exist in all its different elements all over the world, and that there are people putting graphics on boards and hoiking them off to their mates and making T-shirts and trying to put jams on and trying to put events on, and whether those events be strictly legal and legit or not. You know, like you say, it could just be the word gets around. Make sure everyone gets down the skate park this Sunday. We're going to have a few barbecues and we're going to quickly link up an illegal PA system and just have a bloody good time and get on with it.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes those are the best ones.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And it's okay. So I just briefly want to. You mentioned what was an historic street spot at one point, Bristo Square.
Yes.
I am very lucky that very, very briefly as a youngster, because I'm very lucky to have some Scottish relatives who, funnily enough, live in Dunfermline.
Nice.
So I used to go up there sometimes, and one time I went up there and took myself off to Edinburgh and found Bristo Square and had a bit of a sesh. Sometime in the 90s. Is that how is that scene? How is that scene?
Well, it's sort of it's still there, but it's totally different now. It's not the scene it was, right? So when I was skateboarding Bristo Square in the 90s, it was an amazing spot, and I guess it was the time when, like, you know, EMB and SF was like the big thing, and street skating was massive, and no one was really skating. Like, you know, when we go to Livy, for instance, then you'd go now and again for a laugh or whatever, but your wheels are so small that skating, it wasn't that much fun. But, you know, it was, you know, I had an amazing time growing up. I pretty much grew up there, you know, like, you'd go there in the morning, you'd skate there till night, you know, you'd be there all day if it was dry. And if not, you'd be skulking around hoping for it to dry up. So it was just a rad spot with loads of nice blocks. But now it's not what it was in terms of the scene, and also there's not as much to skate there as used to be. There's a whole bunch of kids that still skate there, and there's a few ledges that are skateable, and, you know, there's still sessions and stuff happening. The local shop Paiute, they organise like a sort of annual jam as well. So there's still stuff happening. It's just not as good a spot as it used to be. The old monument's like being moved to a different side of the square, and it's still skateable just, but it's a bit lower than it used to be, so it's maybe not quite as much fun. But it's still there. It's still, you know, part of the scene. People still go and skate street at Bristo Square, but there's obviously like other things to skate now. Like, you know, you've got like Stockton Skate Park, Portobello Skate Park. There's a hoop, and then obviously it's not far away to other places too. So I think since the bigger skate parks got built, it's been a bit of a less of a scene in the city centre in Bristo Square. But it's a shame because it was an amazing era and, you know, great spot. But it is what it is. Eventually these things get redeveloped. Yeah.
And like you say, skateboarding did go through a bit of a change. I mean, that whole late 90s, early 2000s explosion, which we weren't really quite expecting either, you know, like...
No, it was good times. Easy to get money for sponsorship for events back then.
Right, yeah, cool, yeah. Everybody wanted a piece of it, didn't they? Yeah, everybody wanted it, yeah.
But I think it's sort of heading back that way. I think the Olympics has kind of helped do that, but I think still companies are kind of fairly tight with the money with pandemic and whatever else, so it's maybe not quite what it was in the 2000s, but I think it's a bit easier than it was a few years ago, so progress.
Yeah, and is it still the big major cities that have got the big scenes?
Yeah, I would say that generally the places with skate parks are probably where most of the scenes happen nowadays. There's not as many like grassroots sort of street spots anymore. Maybe there are a few places here. Dundee's got a few, like Plaza and whatever else, but yeah, and Glasgow's got quite a big street scene as well. Actually, I'm maybe slightly underselling myself here, but the scenes generally, you know, congregate around the skate parks. I would say that's usually where all the events happen and stuff like that, because those facilities are there, and obviously can be more fun than trying to arrange an event at a street spot which might have other people involved, pedestrians, whatever else, people sitting on blocks. You know, it's kind of, I think the sort of core scene does end up being around the skate parks, unless you're in a town where you ain't got no skate park, right, and then you're dealing with whatever spots you've got, but that's just the way it's always been.
So we're in January.
Yes.
What's your calendar looking like for this year in terms of
for events? I'm just about to try and sort of help some sponsors pretty soon. So if you're out there, you might get an email in your inbox soon. So we're going to do the Scottish Championships in March, with the winners getting taken down to the UK champs in April. So that's that sort of progression thing.
Yeah.
There is actually a girls' comp pretty soon in Edinburgh, I think. We're not actually involved organising ourselves, but we're going to be there to assist, I think, on the day. I think it's going to be at the Transgression Park in Edinburgh. I'm not sure exactly. I think it's going to be a Sunday, but I'm not sure which Sunday it is. I don't think it's this Sunday, but it's probably going to be pretty soon. So that's something that's coming up. And then obviously War and Thistles in May that I mentioned earlier on. So that's the big ones. And then there'll probably be other things later on in the year as well, depending on what happens. And we're also going to be running one of the Survival of the Sickest legs as well. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's like a young kids comp. So we're going to do one of them for Skateboard GB, and I think that's going to be June. So that's about as far ahead as I can possibly plan with skateboarding. So
yeah, you don't want to do nothing more than about 6 months. Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I mean that's well and truly organised as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and sort of more bigger picture stuff, like if that's, although I know you've said you don't want to organise anything more than 6 months, so it's not so much detailed organisation, but what do you see happening with Skateboard Scotland over the next sort of 5-10 years? Do you have a game plan for that far? Or?
We have got a 5-year strategy document,
right?
Which I could bore you with if you wanted to see it, but no, it's. I mean, we're obviously trying to push the sport in the same way as GPR, right? We're looking to try and get people, as I mentioned, coaches, people. So there is a pathway for people that want to become the next athlete and become in the Olympics. That the opportunities are there now. It's just like you've got to make it happen yourself, right? It's not going to just be handed to you on a plate.
No.
We certainly, will help people and push people if they need that. But where was I going with that train of thought there?
The 5-year strategy,
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of things. We've also applied for funding for the first time, which we may or may not get. And that's to get an employee and hopefully 2 days a week in terms of just like doing the organisational stuff that we sort of get bogged down in, because we're all volunteers in the board. So we're all just, people sort of guddling in and getting stuff done, right? So we've got Sam will help with Instagram and the Facebook pages, and does all of this sort of Thursday session posts and all that sort of stuff. And then Rick runs the website, and we've got like all these guys putting in, answering emails and queries from councils and whatever else, and then also above that, like actually going to like meetings about skate parks and helping them get built, right? And that's something that we do as well. And we've got representatives all over the country. So we've got folk up in Inverness, we've got folk in Aberdeen, we've got folk up further north, Bankery, and so we've got someone in pretty much all parts of the country. So if we've got someone that needs a person that knows about skateboarding to attend a meeting about a skate park, then we can usually find someone to go along to the meeting and hopefully make it worthwhile for the sort of community group that's trying to get that skate park built. I mean, usually most of the stuff we do is like online, helping people like emails and questions they've got. And we have got a sort of how to get a skate park built document that we worked on with Sport Scotland, so that's out there too if people are looking to try and get funding for a skate park or just want to get one built in their town. There's a document out there that will help you point you in the right direction, refunding and how to apply for grants and all that sort of stuff. So that's something we've done as well over the years. So we're always changing, doing new stuff, and I guess trying to develop the sport. But the key thing right now is like the pathway, and obviously with Olympics and that, we're trying to do a bit more on that side of things and do more of these sort of events for younger kids to try and get them out there and seeing it. So we know who the sort of up and comers are as well when we do run these sort of events too. It helps GP too in terms of having an awareness of who the young kids are that are going to be the next rippers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think that's and that's always an interesting phase as well, because it's an interesting phenomena identifying young people, because you never know whether they're going to stick at it or not, and you never know whether that little bit of extra pressure, like, oh yeah, you're going to be the next big guy, whether or not that's going to push them or push them over. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You get two different type of people, don't you? There's people that want that, and those people like really shy away from that. And there's been great examples of like kids that are amazing and sponsored, and then just like sort of fade away because they, I guess, just don't really care about that sort of stuff. So like, I remember Brian Jones. He was like one of the big skaters, like one of my mates from back in the day, Bristo Square. He was like sponsored by Globe and sponsored by those other companies, and just like would rather be doing DJing and sound engineering and not just skating for fun. So like, you know, he just sort of sacked it all off. But so there's, you know, there's plenty of examples of people that are, you know, they are aware that a day job's going to pay their wages and skateboarding isn't. So you've got to just, you know, get on with it and do what you need to do.
Yes, and so we cycle back round to where we started, which is the beauty of skateboarding being both immensely satisfying, but not very financially rewarding.
Yeah, I think it will definitely get better, that side of thing. I mean, I don't know whether that is better though. Like, you know, to me, one of the best things of skateboarding is you're not doing it for the money. Like, you know, I think the worry is that, you know, you get to where, like, you know, professional football and whatever else, you know, these other professional sports where it's like people get paid so much money that it's just like it gets almost like obscene, and you're just like crazy. Like, you know, I don't think it's ever going to get like that. But I guess it would be nicer if it was like a bit fairer in terms of like, you know, if someone was a great skater and could, you know, make a living without having to like have two other jobs to help them along the way, you know. So I think there's a sort of happy medium. I'm not sure if we'll get there, but it'd be nice to think we could.
It would be nice. It would be very nice.
Yeah, because I'd like to see people to be able to skate and get paid a wage to skate if that's, you know, if they're skating well enough and doing the right things for their sponsors. Because right now they're just getting like free stuff, most of these people, and they're not, you know, it's not paying their way. Well, so they end up,
yeah, like you say, there's a balance and there's a medium point, and there's also a point to that, which is that those people who then get a fair wage would be able to go and do the demos and the signing, and they'll be able to stoke out the next generation of kids that are like, oh yeah, I saw that guy skate my local park and he killed it when that team came through. Like, because you're right, if you're working a full-time job or even two jobs, and you try and explain in the summer to your boss, like, I need 3 weeks off to go and like jump in a minivan and drive around England for 3 weeks, like. And I know
you need to work in a skate shop to get away with that.
Yeah. It's just not gonna. Yeah, and you either need to keep paying me for those 3 weeks or allow me those 3 weeks unpaid. It's a hard gig to pull off. Yeah.
Exactly, man. That is the bit that kind of, I guess, stops people doing it. Yeah. Pretty certainly.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, like more power to your elbow, Ali, because it sounds like you're fighting the good fight. You're trying to. I really like the idea that you're trying to strike that balance between, hey, you know, this is something you can do on a curb outside your house, or you can come and attend the Scottish Nationals, and if you do well, we'll try and do our best with whatever resources we have to get you down to the UK Nationals and get you represented and get you out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we've always tried to do, you know. We're certainly not, I think when I first started, it was very much like, what the hell are you doing? What are you up to? I think we've now developed a rapport that, like, skate scene in Scotland definitely respects what we do and you know, appreciates all the events that happen, and maybe they don't care so much about the sort of bureaucracy that we deal with in the background because they don't really see it straight up, and I think that's, you know, we probably don't do a very good job broadcasting all this crap stuff we do about skateboarding that helps, you know, keep it going the way it's going, and, you know, making sure that bad parts aren't funded and money isn't wasted and things like that. That's the sort of stuff that we don't broadcast because, you know, we're just getting on with it. We don't have time to talk about what we've done. You know, as long as the end result is a decent skate park and somewhere that we've helped, and it may take some time, but when it's there, it will be well used, I'm sure.
I think also, just briefly, like, you know, 15 years is enough time for either the 15-year-old kids that were moaning, like, who are you, what are you doing, to sort of, to grow. I don't want to say grow up, but just to grow and to go, okay, maybe there is a point to you. So, okay, more power. Okay, you keep going then. Thank you, Ali. And
I get that from people
right
when I'm talking to them. So you still get the odd person that's like, what's this shit? Organized skateboarding. I don't want to get involved with that. Like, you know what I mean? So there's still people that hate on events in general, or actual competitions where you have to get scored and things like that. You know, so like not everyone's into it. It's fine, but you don't have to get into it. You don't even have to be here. You can go somewhere else. You know, it's not. It's just we just want to make sure that everyone's got the opportunity to do what they want to do. Right? If they want to compete, they can compete. If they don't, then that's fine.
Yeah, and like you say, you're making sure good quality, which is really important because you know, that always used to annoy me when I was younger. About like, I bet the footballers never had to campaign to get a football pitch. Like, why are we here doing this, trying to get a skate park? Because it's really But
I think there'll come a time when that won't be needed, but I think it'll be a wee while away now. I think it's still not there yet. We do still. I think there's more councils that are like getting off their arse and working out they need to create a facility themselves, but sometimes that ends up with the wrong facility getting built unless they speak to the right people. But it's definitely in a better place than it was when I first started skateboarding, when there was like one skate park in Scotland, and you know, just lucky we had Bristo Square. It would have been really terrible.
Well, Ali, thank you very much for your time. Where can people find out about? You mentioned an Instagram and a Facebook page and all that. So
we've got skateboard. We've got I think we've even got Twitter. I'm pretty sure we've got all of the ModCon social media outlets are available on Skateboard Scotland, and we also have our website, skateboardscotland.com, that you can go and peruse at your leisure. We've got the skate park directory on there, which is if you're ever coming to Scotland, if you want to find a skate park in Scotland, you can hover about on the map and find your way to all the rad spots in Scotland. So that's something that we've built over the years as well, which we've had lots of good feedback on. So I'd recommend that if you're coming on your holidays, when you're on your way up to the War of Thistles in May, you can scout out some new parks.
Nice. Gonna expand your horizons a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Ali, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, man. It's been really informative.
No worries, man. You're welcome.
Say goodbye, Ali.
All right. Cheers, guys. Catch you later. Bye.
You're listening to the Skateboarding Show. You dunce breeds. You dunce breeds. You dunce breeds. You dunce breeds.